Why hello there, and welcome back to Let's Make Us a Character. And you might be thinking, hey, didn't you already do Pathfinder 2nd Edition? And yes I did. But Paizo recently released the first of the new Remastered core books, which do three things. Reorganize the core content into a more convenient, and perhaps more profitable, format. Make some very minor rule changes, and the primary one, the big one, it completely divorces Pathfinder from Dungeons and Dragons. Or as much as you can divorce Pathfinder from Dungeons and Dragons. But it does drop the OGL entirely in favor of their new Orc license. And obviously I have thoughts about, well, mainly that last one, but I will save those for the end of the video because the longer I talk in the beginning of the video, the more people will click away. So let's make us a Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered character. We start by selecting an Ancestry, and our options for Ancestry in the Player Core 1 are Dwarf, Elf, Gnome, Goblin, Halfling, Human, Leshy, and Orc. So the same options from the first 2nd edition core book, plus the Orc from the Advanced Player's Guide, and Leshy for good measure. And once again, I do not like Goblins as a core Ancestry. I know it's a big part of their branding, but that branding clearly paints Goblins as wacky little chaos demons. I like Pathfinder Goblins, they are fun, but I just don't see them taking on a quest to discreetly retrieve a stolen ledger for a wealthy aristocrat. As for Orcs, half-Orcs were a thing, so Orcs can easily slot right into that vacated spot, and Leshies, I don't know, they're cool I guess, and they are not a D&D thing, well, at least not as they appear in Pathfinder, and if they are going to give them a more prominent position in the world to go along with their more prominent position in the rules, I am in favor of it. And just in general, I do prefer them to Goblins as like a default silly little guy Ancestry. But if they are going to make them one of the 8 most common Ancestries, they really need to make that a thing in the world. Anyway, that brings us to the first major change, and one that I am actually quite excited about. Ability scores are gone. Obviously, you still have Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, but now they are just attribute modifiers that start at +0. And then each Ancestry provides +1 boosts to 2 listed and 1 free attribute bonuses, and 1 flaw that decreases an attribute by 1. Or, in the case of Humans and Orcs, +1 boost to any 2. And if you're not familiar with the unremastered version, it was mathematically identical except that it retained the ability scores with +1 modifiers for every 2 points above 10 and -1 for every 2 points below 11 from D&D, and then each ability score started at 10 and you received +2 or -2 adjustments. So, as I'm sure I mentioned in the previous video, the ability scores in the base Pathfinder 2nd Edition serve no actual function beyond making it look more like D&D. And before you try and tell me, oh, but they did serve a function because the odd-numbered ability scores were necessary because boosts only added 1 point to scores of 18 or higher. Well, they literally just said that it takes 2 boosts to increase an attribute modifier beyond +4. Not a hard solution, and one that they very easily could have done in the base version. Anyway, back to actually making a character and not complaining, let's go with Leshy, because they are a new and exciting thing, plus they are cute and or threateningly fabulous. And as a Leshy, we get +1 boosts to our Constitution, Wisdom, and 1 attribute bonus of our choice. Let's go with Dexterity, and -1 to Intelligence. Then we choose a heritage, which is basically a subrace. That's just the easiest way to explain what they are. But before I do that, I want to discuss the versatile heritages, which are a thing that was introduced in the Advanced Player's Guide, and are a very interesting addition because they are basically alternate heritages that can be taken by a character of any ancestry to reflect some deviation from the norm in their ancestry. So there are the half-hag changelings, the half or less outsider Nephilims, and the mixed ancestry, which is basically just half-elves and half-orcs, although they have been given fancy new names, and it seems like they are at least trying to actually build up some lore for them in the world, whereas other names like Aasimar and Tiefling have been replaced with generic ones like Angelkin and Hellspawn as part of the overall D&Dification process, and also lost whatever unique lore they had. Although, let's be honest here, Hellspawn is way more metal than Tiefling, and also, people tend to not like it when Tieflings have lore. But the interesting part about the variant ancestries is that it means your half-orc or Hellspawn needn't also be half-human. You can have a half-orc, half-gnome, or a Hellspawn dwarf. However, this does also mean that half-elf and half-orc have been removed as human heritages, leaving them with only the skilled and versatile heritage options, whereas every other ancestry has at least 5 options. I guess it's just too bad that Pathfinder doesn't have like a wide variety of well-defined human cultures within their game world that they could potentially draw on for interesting human heritage options. But as interesting as those are, we can't use any of them here because as a magically constructed plant body inhabited by an ancient immortal nature spirit, no competent GM is going to let you apply any of those versatile heritages to a Leshy. Because remember, you're allowed to say no, even if the book doesn't. So our Leshy heritage options are Cactus, which grants a spine attack, Fruit, which grants a healing fruit that grows on our body and can be eaten by you or another creature to heal 1d8 hit points, which is a little weird. Fungus, which grants dark vision. Gourd, which grants a hollow gourd skull that you can store items in. Yes, really. Leaf, which grants immunity to fall damage. Lotus, which grants the ability to walk on water. Root, which grants extra hit points and a bonus against being involuntarily moved. Seaweed, which grants a swim speed and the ability to breathe underwater. And Vine, which grants climbing-related bonuses. And let's go with Cactus, which grants us a 1d6 unarmed spine attack. Our Leshy ancestry gives us 8 hit points, sets our size at small, around 3 feet tall, which affects almost nothing, gives us a base speed of 25 feet, which is the standard base speed for everyone but elves and dwarves, gives us the Leshy and plant traits, low light vision, the plant nourishment ability, which basically means that instead of eating, all we need to survive is water, soil, and sunlight. And we begin speaking Common, Fey, and a number of additional languages equal to our intelligence modifier, which is -1, so none. We also get to pick one Leshy ancestry feat, and let's go with Seed Pod, which gives us an unarmed ranged attack, dealing 1d4 damage and exploding into tangling vines on a critical hit. And that's it for ancestry, so next up is background, and honestly, there are not a lot of great options here for a character who is, as mentioned, a plant-based magical construct possessed by an ancient nature spirit. So let's say herbalist. Maybe the druid who created our body also taught us the ways of natural medicine. Our background grants us 2 attribute boosts, one to Constitution or Wisdom, let's go with Wisdom, and a free boost to anything, so let's go with Strength. We also get training in the Nature and Herbalism lore skills, and the Natural Medicine feat, which allows us to use nature in place of medicine when treating wounds. And I will explain skills further once we get all of them for level 1, but for now, we are about to become trained in a bunch of stuff, so I guess I should once again explain how training works in this game. Essentially, to everything for which you roll a d20 or a d20 is rolled against, you add a proficiency bonus. If you are untrained in that thing, the proficiency bonus is 0, and if you are trained, the proficiency bonus is equal to your level, plus 2, which then goes up to plus 4, plus 6, and plus 8 if you are expert, master, or legendary, respectively. So as a level 1 character, our proficiency bonus for trained is plus 3, 1 for our level and 2 for being trained. And for expert, it is plus 5, 1 for our level and 4 for the expertise. And as stated in the previous video, adding your entire level to proficiency still feels like you are making the numbers bigger just to make them bigger. But that is it for background, and it is now time to select a class, the options being Bard, Cleric, Druid, Fighter, Ranger, Rogue, Witch, and Wizard, with each class granting a +1 bonus to its key attribute. So we have all of the core 2nd edition classes, minus Alchemist, Barbarian, Champion, aka Paladin, Monk, and Sorcerer, with the addition of the Witch from the Advanced Player's Guide. Something of an unusual selection, the omission of the Alchemist is a little weird, honestly, as of the original Pathfinder classes, it is the most distinctive and the one that seems like it is the most prominent in the Pathfinder brand identity. Whereas the Witch is just always kind of struck me like it's trying to thematically be a warlock while also just kind of being a variant wizard. And perhaps I am just cynical, I think we all know that I'm cynical, but it also seems like maybe they're saving some of the more popular classes like Alchemist, Barbarian, Monk, and Sorcerer for the player core too, because like Swashbuckler and Investigator aren't exactly the most in-demand classes. But hey, maybe there are actually important creative decisions being made here that won't be fully clear until the player core 2 comes out. Or maybe not. And since I have been buffing wisdom and selecting nature-themed options, you might have already guessed that we are going with Druid. As a Druid, we get a boost to our wisdom, and then get 4 more boosts that we can put in whatever 4 attributes we wish. So let's put those in Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom. Our class also gives us 8 more hit points, plus 2 from our Constitution, for 18 total. We are trained in Perception, so plus 3 proficiency, plus 4 wisdom is 7 total, as well as Fortitude and Reflex saves, and Expert in Will saves, to which we add our Constitution, Dexterity, and Wisdom modifiers for totals of 5, 5, and 9 respectively. Then we gain training in the Nature skill, a skill determined by our Druidic order, and a number of additional skills equal to 2 plus our Intelligence modifier. And our Intelligence modifier is -1, so 2 plus -1 is 1. But also, we are already trained in nature from our background, so we do get to choose another skill in place of that. And let's go with Stealth and Survival. We are also trained in spell attacks and spell DC, to which we add our Wisdom modifier, and in the case of the spell DC, 10. And notably, in the base 2nd edition, it was primal spell attacks and primal spell DCs. Not sure if there's actually a mechanical difference there, or if it's just simplification of terminology. And speaking of primal spells, we can prepare 5 primal cantrips and 2 level 1 primal spells per day. And how many primal spells do we know? Well, all of them. Well, almost all of them. When preparing our spells, we can choose from all of the common spells on the primal spell list. And there are only like 9 uncommon spells on the primal spell list, so pretty much all of them. Which is either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how well you deal with having lots and lots of options. We are also trained in our class DC. All classes are now trained in the class DC. Spellcasters weren't in the base 2nd edition, and that was a whole thing. And it is calculated exactly the same as our spell DC, and I still can't help but feel like it would be easier to only have the class DC and then treat the special cases where they are not the same as special cases instead of just the default. And finally, druids are trained in simple weapons and unarmed attacks, as well as unarmored defense and light and medium armor, and we do have to specifically be trained in unarmored defense because of the way that proficiencies work. And now it is time that we must talk about Edicts and Anathema, which you may have heard are the new replacement for the stupid D&D alignment system, but not really. I mean, they are the replacement for the alignment system, but they are not new. Edicts and Anathema were already part of 2nd edition. Deities had lists of them which champions and clerics had to follow, and druids had their own special lists. Even some barbarian options had Anathema attached to them, so they are a thing that has been there the whole time. It's just that now the concept is being extended to all characters to allow players a more nuanced set of morals for their character than just picking one of 9 options off a chart. So now instead of just saying your character is good and then by association so are all of their actions no matter how deplorable, you actually have to consider what good means. Or not. I mean, it's optional, so you can actually ignore it even easier than the other outdated alignment system. Although there is a notable change here. One item has actually been removed from the Druid Anathema. Druids are no longer forbidden from wearing metal armor and using metal shields, a restriction that dates all the way back to the Druid's debut in 1976's Eldritch Wizardry. And that is a thing that I was a little annoyed about at first, until I thought about it and yeah, that never made sense. Why is it okay for a druid to use metal weapons and tools, but not a metal shield? If they were forbidden from using metal items at all, that would make way more sense. But even then, why draw the line there? How is metal fundamentally different from glass or masonry? Where is the line between nature and society in terms of refined materials? Once again, it's just another thing that was simply in the game because it was a thing in D&D. Anyway, that aside, our Druid Anathema are that we must not despoil natural places, consume more natural resources than are required to live comfortably, or teach the Wild Song to non-druids. Oh yeah, we also speak Wild Song, which is the name of the Druidic language now. Then we must select a Druidic order, the options being Animal, Leaf, Storm, and Untamed, which was previously the Wild Order and has just been renamed to remove references to the term Wild Shape. And while Leaf seems like the most obvious choice here, it is also the option that provides a Leshy familiar, and being a Leshy with a Leshy familiar is kinda weird, and not in the weird, I like it kinda way. So let's go with Animal. And the Animal Order grants us training in the Athletics skill, which is our final skill for first level, so we then take the relevant attribute modifiers and add the proficiency bonuses for the total skill bonuses. We also get the Animal Companion Druid feat, which grants us the services of an Animal Companion. And that is a whole thing that I will explain partially right now. There are 16 Animal Companion options provided in the Player Core 1, and as a cactus, I feel like we should go with the most deserty option, which is Scorpion. Animal Companions have their own companion stat blocks versus in 1st edition where they just use the animal's monster stats, and are effectively the same level as us for the purpose of training and proficiency and such, and are trained in everything listed in their stat block, plus all saves. They also start with a number of Ancestry hit points, plus 6 plus their Constitution modifier for each level we possess, so 6 plus 6 plus 1 equals 13. And the really neat thing here, each companion type offers a support benefit, which is some kind of benefit they can provide you by taking a special support action. So, for example, a Scorpion's support benefit adds 1d6 persistent poison damage to a successful attack. And then the different animals do different things, like frightening a foe, hampering movement, or distracting them by flapping wildly in their face, which is my favorite. They also each have a special advanced maneuver, but that is a thing that is not going to be relevant until at least level 8, so I'm not going to get into it. And then there's some other stuff, but we will come back to that later. Our order also gives us the Heal Animal Order spell, which is a special healing spell that only works on animals, like our animal friend, but is also a special kind of spell which, rather than being cast with spell slots, is cast using focus points. And we also get 1 focus point and can regain 1 by spending 10 minutes refocusing. And finally, our order gives us 1 additional anathema, committing wanton cruelty to animals or killing animals unnecessarily. So, in short, we can hunt for food or clothing, but not for sport. Then we get the Shield Block feat, which lets us perform a shield block, reducing damage by our shield's hardness rating at the cost of the remaining damage being dealt to both us and the shield, and is just a thing that druids get for some reason. And finally, Voice of Nature, which gives us our choice of the animal empathy or plant empathy feats, both of which allow communication with that type of thing. And once again, plant seems the most appropriate for this character. Also, I just think being able to question flowers and grass is kind of funny. And that is it for our class, and next up we get 15 gold to buy equipment, and conveniently we don't need any weapons since we already have a melee and ranged unarmed attack plus spells, but just in case there is something we want to stab but really don't want to get close to, I guess we might as well pick up a long spear, which also happens to be the only weapon we're proficient in that deals more damage than our spine attack. Then we'll get some hide armor, a steel shield, because apparently we can use one of those now, and of course a good old-fashioned adventurer's pack for all of our adventuring essentials. Although we really don't need the included 2 weeks of rations, so let's take those out and replace them with 1 week of special bottled sunlight rations, which costs 10 times as much as normal rations. Because while leshies don't need to eat, they also can't eat, so this is the only substitute for sunlight without which we will starve. So probably a good thing to have on hand for emergencies. Leaving us with 5 gold and 8 silver for, betting on squirrel fights. And our items have a total bulk of 6, and we can carry an amount of bulk equal to 5 plus our strength, so just barely good for now. And that is our equipment, but before I leave the equipment section, I would like to point out that they have added a selection of assistive items, which is a cool thing to see, even if it is kinda done at an absolute minimum. And now that we have our equipment, we can calculate our armor class, which is equal to 10, plus our dexterity bonus, which is 2, proficiency bonus, which is 3, and you notably would not add that if you were not proficient in the armor, meaning that there is pretty much no reason to ever wear armor that you are not proficient in, because proficiency very quickly becomes the biggest part of your bonuses. And hide armor has an AC bonus of 3, but also a dexterity cap of 2, which is the maximum dexterity bonus you can add to your AC while wearing that armor. And our dexterity is +2, so that is not an issue. Hide armor also has a check penalty of -2 and a speed penalty of 5, both of which are negated by a strength of +2, which we also have. And then our shield grants an additional +2 to our AC, as well as having a hardness of 5, 20 hit points, and a broken threshold of 10. So when using shield block, we can reduce damage by 5 points, but the shield will break, but not be completely destroyed, when it takes 10 damage. So our total armor class is 20. Now our attack bonuses, which are equal to the proficiency bonus of +3, plus our strength for melee or dexterity for ranged attacks. However, our spine attack has the finesse quality, meaning that we can use dexterity in place of strength for the attack. But our strength and dexterity are both +2, so it doesn't really matter for the time being, and our attack bonuses are both +5. Our spine attack deals 1d6 plus strength, which is plus 2 damage, and more importantly allows us to fight while wielding a shield and keeping a free hand. And then our seed pod deals 1d4 damage, and the general consensus I'm seeing online is that there is no additional damage added to that, as seed pod is not specified as being thrown or propulsive. They're not very clear on how it works specifically. And then we do all the same calculations for Lady Snippington, and I guess now that we have all those values, I might as well explain how animal companions work. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, each round you get 3 actions, and you can use one of those actions to perform the command animal action, which then allows your animal companion to perform 2 actions. So you can move, attack, and then command your animal companion, who can then move and attack. But you can't, move, cast a 2-action spell, and then command your animal companion. Then we just have to pick some miscellaneous things like age, name, and pronouns, all of which are just a little more complicated for a Leshy, since they are immortal spirits of nature temporarily granted human form, and specifically stated to start life as adults and not age, so could reasonably be anywhere from 0 to hundreds of years old. And let's just say 1d100. Also, it is explicitly stated that many Leshies fall outside of the gender binary, a thing that I'm sure nobody is unreasonably upset about. And cacti are monoecious, so let's just roll with that. And names are stated to be changed multiple times through the Leshy's life, with given examples like Scarlet in Summer, Masterful Sun Drinker, and Cascading Rapids. So, I don't know, something appropriately lame. Dusty Sunset. And this character is done. So, I guess we might as well level up, but I am gonna try and be quick about it. At level 2 and every level thereafter, our proficiency bonus for trained and higher goes up by 1, affecting everything to which that is added and artificially inflating those values so that game content is quickly leveled out of. We get another 8 plus constitution modifier, so 10 hit points, 1 additional level 1 spell per day, a druid feat, and let's take reach spell, which lets us spend an action to increase the range of a spell by 30 feet, including touch spells, which is incredibly useful. And I would like to point out that this is the kind of stuff that really makes me like the action economy of this game. Untyping the actions made them much more versatile. And a skill feat, and let's go with Survey Wildlife, which lets us identify signs of what wildlife may be living in an area. Then level 3, proficiency bonus increase, more hit points, and 2 level 2 spells per day. Notably, now our trained bonus is +5 and expert is +7, making proficiency the largest single bonus added to anything. Our fortitude and perception proficiencies increase to expert, so a +2 bonus, and we get a skill increase, which can be used to either gain training in a new skill or increase a trained skill to expert. And let's just go to expert in nature, because that is kind of our thing. And finally, we get a general feat, and let's go with Die Hard, which gives us an extra chance to not die, and arguably makes us a Christmas movie. Then level 4, proficiency bonus, hit points, and spells, another druid feat, and we'll go with Mature Animal Companion, which advances our animal companion from young to mature. So let's bring up Lady Snippington, and as we share a level, her proficiency bonuses have been going up as well, +7 hit points per level. And now as a mature companion, her size increases from small to medium, which happens to be large enough for a small creature to ride, and I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to mess with a cactus riding a scorpion. Her strength, dexterity, constitution, and wisdom all increase by 1. Proficiency in perception and all saves increases to expert, and we gain training in intimidation, stealth, and survival, or expertise if already trained. And damage from her unarmored attacks increases by 1 die, so from 1d6 to 2d6. And a mature animal companion is also able to take 1 action per round without having to be commanded, which is convenient in case we need to use all of our actions for something like activating Reach spell and casting Goblin Pox on a creature 30 feet away. And another skill feat, so how about Terrain Stalker, which lets us automatically succeed on stealthing through one type of difficult terrain, let's say underbrush. And finally, level 5, so all of the regular stuff, plus 4 attribute boosts, and let's put those in Strength, Dexterity, Intelligence, and Charisma. If you are wondering why I did not put one in Wisdom, remember it takes 2 boosts to raise an attribute above plus 4, and we don't get more boosts until level 10, at which point that additional plus 1 won't really matter as much when compared to our plus 12 or higher proficiency bonus. Also, it's just never a good idea to assume that a character, or campaign for that matter, will even actually reach level 10, because they usually don't. Our reflex save increases to Expert, we get another skill training, and this time let's get skilled in Intimidation, because as previously mentioned, cactus riding a scorpion. And we also get one more skill training for increasing our intelligence modifier, I guess Acrobatics. And finally, an Ancestry feat, and let's go with Ritual Reversion, which allows us to assume the form of a regular non-humanoid cactus, because nobody ever suspects the cactus. And I would just like to point out that at this level, our plus 7 trained and plus 9 expert proficiency bonus account for around 2/3 or more of the bonuses and DCs, excluding armor class. And that was a Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered character. And overall, I feel like the remaster did a lot of things that the original 2nd Edition should have done. Specifically, cutting out some of that Dungeons and Dragons baggage. When Pathfinder 1st Edition came out, it was very much just the other Dungeons and Dragons 3rd Edition, but over time they really started to cultivate a unique Pathfinder identity and fanbase, which really should have been the focus of 2nd Edition, being Pathfinder instead of just once again the other Dungeons and Dragons. Because here is the big thing, not being Dungeons and Dragons actually has some incredible advantages. There are certain things that D&D is just kinda stuck with, like the 3d6 ability scores and the good/evil law/chaos alignment system. Those things are a big part of the overall D&D brand, so no matter how worthless they become, they can't really get rid of them without massive outcry. Whereas Pathfinder can, and did in this remaster, without really changing anything because those things were already superfluous. The vast majority of changes here are just renaming things, and yeah, that can and will be confusing for someone who is already familiar with the base 2nd Edition. Like, if you are looking for color spray, it is not going to be under C because it is now Dizzying Colors. And yeah, that is Paizo's fault for not taking this step when they should have. Because, honestly, that is my biggest complaint here. The fact that this only happened after being threatened with having the license that their entire product line is based on revoked, whether or not the Wizards actually had any legal grounds to do so. So they had to keep it to these very minor changes instead of the major ones that they really should have made for 2nd Edition in general. Because if they only had to change this handful of things to strip out open game content, it kinda makes it seem like they didn't really need to be using the OGL to begin with. Although it is worth noting that apparently the champion will require some actual retooling to function in a more morally complex game, but the real question with that is, why bother? When you're already cutting out useless, outdated D&D garbage, why even waste time and space in the book having a paladin class? It's just another chunk of dead weight that is only in the game because it has been in the game. So overall, I think this is a good thing. My only concern being that they'll go too overboard with removing all the D&D monsters. Like, chromatic and metallic dragons are gone. Great, I don't care about those, and they're being replaced with new types of dragons that could be interesting. Probably won't, but hypothetically could. And like, owlbears are gone. Yeah, that's a very D&D thing that I can definitely live without. But there are some monsters that Wizards of the Coast totally abandoned during their 3rd and 4th edition edgy phase, until Paizo was the one that proved people very much did want their D&D game to be a little silly. And yeah, I may be a little biased, but if there is one thing worth holding on to from Dungeons & Dragons, I think it's flumps. Just rename them plumps or falumfalumfalogs or something. No trademark infringement there, and I'm sure people will think of something shorter to call them. Although for now it is actually something of a non-issue because the old bestiaries are still going to be compatible. The only thing that's really changed is the alignment. Although personally, I am actually looking forward to seeing how this develops if and when a Pathfinder 3rd edition comes out. Because, you know, it is entirely possible that when D&D's popularity crashes in a few years, it'll just take the entire industry down with it. And that is it for Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered. Unless I do another one when the Player Core 2 comes out. And sorry if my voice sounds terrible, I am getting over a cold that just doesn't seem to be going away, so hopefully that is not going to be a long-term problem. And thank you for watching, with extra special thanks to my Fightin' Flail Snails, Broken Unicorn, Randy Mulholland, and Toshi Rokuro. If you'd like to be cool like them, check out my Patreon where you can get early access to videos and fun stuff that I make for the Patreon. But if you don't want to do that, that's cool too. You can still hit all the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, these other videos floating around screen that either myself or the cold, heartless YouTube algorithm have lovingly selected for you, which I'm sure are lovely videos that you will also enjoy. And I will see you next time.